We're live.
Happy days.
Happy
Happy days.
Tuesday. It's Tuesday, right? Yeah.
Tuesday.
Happy
It
Tuesday,
is Tuesday.
everybody. We're live.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you.
We're back in action.
Kathy
How's it
bought me
going?
this shirt. Came yesterday. It says, what does it say?
That's what I do. I fix stuff and I know things.
There it is.
This is very good.
Yeah, she's like, this fits you perfectly.
I fix stuff and I know things.
Yeah.
Sounds like lots of men, huh?
No, it sounds like, old men.
Old men.
Old men, yeah. It was modeled on an old man.
Oh, funny.
Yeah. One of them said, I'm Papa, I fix things. And
Yep.
That's the one I probably should have. But so, hey, it's good seeing all you guys. We're excited to be with you. Thanks for all your comments. I read them. All. By the way, I don't know if you know this, but I go back. I don't know if you do this. I go back and read all the comments that you guys do live and also after the recording. So thanks for commenting. Thanks for the encouragement and following us.
Yes. And we're going to answer questions.
Again.
Are you ready for some live Q&A?
That was why we started doing this.
It's answering this.
We get all these questions and people don't ever get them answered. So we're trying to answer the most best we can.
Yes. Okay. Here we go.
Here we go.
We're going to jump in. First question we have for today. And I always forget, but as always, if you have questions while we're live, put them in the chat and we'll do our best to get to them.
We do our best to get to them.
Okay. First question is, what does it look like for the church to practically work with local government? So I think person's asking, you talk a lot about it, and how we, even as a church, had partnered with our local city, and what has that practically looked like?
Well, I think it can look like different things depending on what the gifts of your church are. Mm-hmm. We have a very large church, so we have 10,000 people here. So, and we have a school ministry that's a little bit like an army, or I don't know what you'd call it, because we're not out to war with anyone, but so we have the ability to actually organize in a way that a lot of people wouldn't, because our entire school is organized into groups of 50 or groups of 60. So and everyone in our school is required to do a community day. Yeah, once a week. So they're involved in community, and some of them are mentoring. They're mentoring students that high school and junior high students. Some of them go to the jail. About a couple hundred of them work actually physically with in our city doing vegetation care, landscape, city projects. So there's 1,600 of them. So they're just everywhere. On Thursdays, working in our city. And the reason why we do that, of course, is because what we want our students to understand is that our city, other people ought to benefit from your relationship with God. That's the message. Mm-hmm. And Jesus talked about becoming a city on a hill that couldn't be hidden. And we're like, okay, you're a light, you're a city on a hill that can't be hidden. So I think that, first of all, it comes down to attitude and what your gift mix is and what you have in your church that can be of help.
Yeah.
And finances are a part of it, of course.
Yeah.
We've done everything from gifting drones to the sheriff's department and the police department because they needed them and they were unable to afford them, to doing ash shots during the fire in hazmat suits, to the BGR team led by Kris Vallotton was, for 18 months been clearing people's yards with from the burnt trees. Mm-hmm. Those all have to be cleared before they can ever rebuild. Mm-hmm. And insurance very seldom covers that. So those are all things that we've been doing. But what we've did is we assessed what the gifts of our team were and then decided how we could help.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah.
Really, really good. And
also, like the kind of comments you make about your city leaders kind of depends a lot about, determines what kind of relationship you're going to have, If you're judgmental about your city leaders and then, you're probably not going to build much of a relationship with them. And So I should have started with this. Like, we actually went to different ones of our city leaders, our city manager, our city council people, our sheriff, our police chief, and said, how could we be of help?
Yeah.
And in the beginning, it was like, well, you could help clean the park, and that was kind of it. As time went on, and we built a relationship, we've been doing this for almost 20 years now. The police chief or the police chief or the city manager, or the different people would say, "What do you have anybody who is good at this?"
Yeah.
We're like, "Yeah, I think we do," or "No, we don't." And so we're asking them, how do you want to be served?
Yeah.
To make sure that we're actually not just in a way.
Yeah.
In the name of Christianity,
Totally. That's really beautiful. So even developing relationship.
That's the key.
Yeah. Well, and I love too that you said that it wasn't like, oh, they gave you the biggest, grandest job.
Oh, no, they gave us the crappiest job.
Right.
First, yeah.
And then you just took that and you did that really well. You stewarded, the little that you had, and eventually more and more opportunity opened for students and for people in our church to be able to work with the city and be able to be integrated and associated with them. So
we have a glass bridge, for example. It's beautiful. It's called Sundial Bridge, but it hadn't been cleaned in years. And, we went to them in the city and said, hey, what do you think about cleaning the bridge? And they said, oh, well, you'd have to do it this way. You'd have to take this class. And okay, well, let's do that. Let's figure out what equipment we need. And so I think in that case, I think the city, I'm pretty sure the city provided the equipment, but we went to a training. It had to be done at a certain time because the spiders, they don't want, there's all these environmental issues that they don't want you to kill the spiders. And during certain times, especially, when they're, I don't know, breeding, whatever they're doing, I don't remember. I didn't take the class. So, but I mean, it sounds like just spray a hose in there, but actually you have to get on a boat and, to get under there with a high pressure hose, and it has to be done a certain way. And so, I mean, those are just, it depends on how, we have some very talented people, so it's easier for us to do some of those things.
Yeah. People on board. Okay, next question. Somebody's asked, I work in media. How can I partner with Holy Spirit to be a light in this industry? It's a great question.
It's probably secular media, huh? What comes to your mind?
Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind, and this is tricky, right? Because it's easy to have this mindset that there's even a divide between the two. So what you bring in one would be different than what you bring in the other. But if you carry Holy Spirit, then you carry him into the same room if you were working for a Christian media company as if you were working for a secular media company. And so I think the tricky thing is maybe you don't communicate with the same sort of language that we might in the church, right? Because you want to be able to speak in a way that people can understand you and appear in a way where people can receive from you and, respect you. So maybe it doesn't look the same or maybe even feel the same, but what you bring into the room is the same. So I just encourage the person that the way they are showing up in that industry is making a difference by who they are, by the presence that they bring into that room. It makes a difference.
Two things come to my mind, and caring and hope. I played basketball with these guys. Most of them don't know the Lord. There's probably about a total of maybe 40 guys total. There's always maybe 15 to 20 there, but there's probably 40 total. There's 3 of those guys that definitely don't know the Lord, and they're all going through marriage issues. And interestingly, every one of them have come up privately and said, hey, I know you're a pastor. I'm going through a marriage issue. And I'm like, oh, really? Okay. And 2 of them I gave, hey, this phone number, you should call this gal. She's really awesome. And then what I've done, like yesterday, I was playing basketball yesterday, and I went up to one of the guys who he is an atheist and a really nice guy, but doesn't know the Lord at all. And I would say he's a radical atheist. He's just kind of like maybe an agnostic. And I said, hey, you had your counseling appointment yesterday. How did it go? And he's like, it was really tough. I said, really? He said, yeah, I have another one today. I said, are you nervous? He goes, yeah, pretty nervous. And all I'm doing with those guys is letting them know, I remembered you had your appointment last week.
Right.
Care. And I said to each one of them separately, not on the same day, hey, dude, you are a really good man. your wife is very lucky to have you. And I know that whatever you learn in that appointment, you're going to be the kind of person who changes.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, super uplifting. And then, one of the guys came in yesterday while we were playing, and I turned to him, and I knew he had an appointment yesterday, and I went like this, praying for you. He goes, thank you. So, it's like, I care.
Yeah, I'm showing up. I remember you.
I'm there.
It's not hyper spiritualized. It's I'm loving you where you're at.
Yeah. And I'm also hopeful.
Yeah.
I'm also, dude, this is going to work out. It's really great that you're seeing a counselor. Yeah. This guy's been married for 16 years. I don't think he's actually married to her. I think he's been living with her for 16 years. They got kids together, and he's like, I've never been to counseling in 16 years. I'm like, well, this is
never
great.
Too late
this
to
is
try.
So so I think stuff like that is very helpful, and it's helpful when people do it to me too.
100%. Okay, this is somewhat of a follow-up question to what we were talking about right before.
Okay.
Somebody asked, what if I don't have a team, but I still want to make a difference? So they're talking about in regards to practically connecting with your city. What would it look like as an individual, maybe to be able to make a difference within their city?
This may not be true, but it feels important to me that we actually have a connection to somebody who's in city leadership. Who, it can be the lowest level person, maybe, the city council member or whatever, because otherwise you find yourself doing things that they often don't want done. But let's say that you are great at hospitality. You could go to the fire chief and say, what do you think about, do you have some guys you want to celebrate or gals you want to celebrate? Like, could we do a big, like a big celebration? I'll make all the food, I'll make a cake, whatever. And, maybe for morale, like we could celebrate your team.
Yeah.
And there you go. It's just like, it doesn't have to be rocket science. It's just, can I bring benefit to your team?
Yeah.
And what gifts do I have to help do that?
Yeah, to show up.
But we had people, not on our teams, but in another church that we love, they were feeding people in the park, and, homeless people. And, the police chief called me and he goes, hey, do you have any relationship with these guys? I know it's not your church. I said, yeah, this guy had friends. He goes, well, we're trying to keep the homeless out of the park because they leave needles and all this paraphernalia. And then we have to close the park to the kids. So that park they're feeding in, we just cleaned that park up, and we just are inviting kids in it. And they fed last week on Saturday at the park. Okay, yeah, great. I'll have a conversation with them. So, here's my friends feeding in the park thinking they're doing a great thing. And yet the actual people who are in authority go, well, feed them somewhere, but not here.
Yeah.
Don't attract them into the park, because then it ruins the park for the kids, which the parks were built for.
When you're helping hurts.
Yeah, you're helping.
Your helping is actually hurt, and we need to take a step back and
totally
ask some questions.
So that's why I say you got to talk to somebody that is in authority, so that you make sure you're. Sometimes people want to help you, and they're like, "I'll make you some soup." It's like, I can't eat soup. I'll make you some. I don't eat dairy. It's like it's like, I know you want to help me, but. Yeah, I'm actually just going to throw this meal away after you leave my house, because I can't, it's over,
Yeah, that's good. Okay, somebody's asked, has the Lord given you any specific direction in this season on how you are to impact culture? Or maybe even that could become how we as believers can impact culture.
Well, we shared this, several times recently, right? Because we're heading towards School of the Prophets, and we're asking the question, like, what's the Lord saying? And for me, I'm like, I said last week or the week before, I think it's important to pick a fight. Pick your fight. Like, what is it you want to see change?
That's good.
And, so if it's, if it's sex trafficking, like we just saw that movie. Sound of Freedom. Great movie. You get out of there and you're like, I want to solve this problem. You're like, is that really what you're called to? Obviously, we want people to be called. Maybe you're going to give money to it, but is that where you're going to give your life to? And so, and find one or two things that the Lord's called you to that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And let that be your fight. But what I think so many people do is they're so passionate about changing the world that they get involved in 20 things and they just don't do anything very well. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe your kids are in the public school system and you're like, I'm going to start going to board meetings, you know, school board meetings and see what they're like and what they're teaching my kids. And maybe, you know, the 10 or 15 years that your kids are in school, maybe that's your gig. Like my gig is that I am influencing what my kids are learning. And I'm not just going to advocate my authority to teachers and a school system I don't know and I don't trust.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, you can give yourself totally to it. I think that's really, I feel like the Lord gave me this phrase, pick a fight. And I don't mean fighting people, but I mean a cause. There's a cause that that we should be involved in. And I think we should be involved in, each one of us have a passion that's different.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't judge people because they're not doing my thing.
Right.
You know, thing I'm passionate about.
That's good.
Yeah.
Love it.
If you have a different answer, you can jump in anytime.
No, I think that's good. I think that your thought about what is it that you're passionate about, what is it that your heart burns for, I'm sure there's a need in that area that you can go figure out how to be involved in without rallying a whole team to do it with you, where, you know, maybe that's not the season. Maybe you don't have a whole team to gather, but doesn't mean you can't go out and put your foot forward into it.
And if you don't have anything, I was thinking about, you know, if you're like, I can't think of anything I'm passionate about. And the truth is, sometimes you don't have a passion until you expose yourself to the need, right? And I remember for 5 years, a friend, his name is Paul, and we went to the convalescent hospital every Sunday. Yeah. And we did a service for them. It was like less than an hour long, like 45 minutes long. And we went room to room and loved on people and then invited them to the service, which is, 15 minutes later at the end of the hall. Mm-hmm. And there'd be anywhere from, 5 to 20. Mm-hmm. And then we, mostly sang old songs like At the Cross and hymns, because, and then we would teach a short message, which is always about hope, right? Yeah. Or heaven, hope or heaven, and we prayed for them. And we did that for 5 years. I never had a passion for that. Mm-hmm. The whole 5 years I did it. Mm-hmm. I just thought, where's the need? Mm-hmm. Where are people who need help that are pretty much ignored? Yeah. And there wasn't, there was a handful of times when I could say, wow, that was amazing. Yeah. Most of the time it was just like loving on people and doing it so habitually, like we did it every week. Yeah. And so I think that sometimes it's not about like, what makes you alive? It's like, sometimes it's what makes other people alive.
That's so true. And I think sometimes then when you expose yourself to it, you actually feel the Lord's heart for those people. Yeah. So then it becomes really easy to love those people. Even if it's not your deepest passion in life, you begin to love those people and want to see them do well. So you show up every week. I'm willing to walk room to room and say good morning to everybody. Totally. Maybe it's not the thing that makes me feel most alive, but I have a love for these people. I have compassion for these people.
Yeah. And you think about so many of those people have nobody visit them. Mm-hmm. It's really sad. And now you're, I would say in the last years of that, because you get to know the patient and the nurse is like, no one ever visits them. You do move not so much in passion, but in compassion.
Yeah, totally. It's really good. Really good. Okay. Somebody's asked, where did it go? How do you show the love of God to people without affirming their wrong decisions?
Yeah. What do you think about that? Like, are you a Zir? Are you young enough to be it?
I'm a millennial.
You're a millennial. Okay.
It's that wild. Okay, what is this question? How do you affirm without wrong decisions? Well, this is interesting because I think so often this question makes me think that somebody thinks in order to love somebody, you have to affirm them. And that's not the case. There's a lot of people I love in my life and I don't agree with them.
Like your husband.
Like literally he's the first thing that came to mind. I love him so much, the most, but there's plenty of times that I don't agree with him and I tell him because I love him. Yeah. So,
get off my cloud.
Exactly. But you say this, right? The person only has as much influence as they value you. So that's also, I mean, how much should you share that you don't agree with them? Should you share their input, or should you show up and demonstrate and be an example of what it looks like to live a life surrendered to the Holy Spirit, live a life following the Lord, even if they're making decisions that you don't agree with? Doesn't mean that you can't be in relationship with them.
You know, I don't know who coined this phrase, but people don't care how much you know until you know how much you care. And I think you can't fake caring. No, you can't. Yeah, it's like when you step on the, car lot and the guy's like, oh yeah. I'm like, oh, this feels so plastic. And I think sometimes, when we have an agenda, like I'm going to get you to pray this prayer, I'm going to get you to, come to our church. It's like, well, just scrap the motive and just actually earnestly find a way to care.
Yeah. It's like when when you're sick or when you have a tragedy in life, you realize who your friends are in those seasons, because they're the people that care. They're the people that show up at your door when things are not fun, when life isn't exciting, but they're there for you because they really care. It wasn't fake.
Yeah. And if you don't care yet, because I don't mean that accusationally, but it's hard to care. I mean, we're exposed to so many needs.
And so many people.
Yeah, like, how do you care? Like, how do you truly feel compassion for that many people? But I think that if you get in people's space where they're in pain, it is interesting how something does grow in you for somebody you truly did not have compassion for, but you got in their space, you learn their story, and then you get compassion,
Yeah, totally. I love it. Okay, I think we have time for one last question.
God, this goes so fast.
I know.
We could do longer ones, but longer ones, by the way, people are maybe, why don't you do an hour? Because people don't stay on, like, actually listen to things that are longer.
Okay.
Unless it's Elon Musk.
Your favorite.
I've listened to 3 of his this week that were all an hour and a half.
Okay, somebody has asked, how can I have a prophetic family and not make them dislike the ministry? It's a very interesting question.
Wow, it'd be the opposite to me. Like those two don't go together. Like prophetic ministry in family is so fun that, I don't know how old their kids are though.
Yeah.
But when they grow up in it, when our kids are exposed to the third dimension and they get, they're experiencing the excitement of, the spiritual realm on a regular basis, it's so intriguing and fun. And seeing somebody, a prophecy come true, or having dreams and having an angel encounter, having somebody in your house who gets delivered from an evil spirit, and the next time you see them, they're like totally changed. And I mean, it's just hard to actually have real ministry that isn't exciting and attractive. Yeah. As opposed to a boring life where we go to church on Sunday and call that Christianity,
Right.
So I don't think those two things are incongruent with each other. Like I think what's incongruent is when you preach to your kids. I want to be careful because I do think that, teaching our kids the word's important, but I think there's a balance on how we do it. I'm not sure I got that balance very well when my kids were growing up, but they all love the Lord. So, something went right in their life. But yeah, I think shoving the Bible down kids' throats, I think being really religious and having the Bible like reduce them from the standpoint of what they can do, it does on some level. It's like, hey, I don't want you to sleep with boys, I don't want you to sleep with girls, I don't want you involved in immorality. But there should be so many benefits to following the Lord,
Yeah. I like what you say or I like what you said, that it's not necessarily preaching it at, right? But it is portraying it. I think so much about my life. I think about how my parents modeled their faith with the Lord.
Yeah.
And there were times I remember being so annoyed that my mom was suggesting that I dare do a devotional in the morning, right? But I look back on those things and those principles that she was so intentional about laying in our life are principles that still to this day I walk out, because not necessarily because it was preached at me, but because I watched how that rang true when she would just say little things like, the power of life and death is in your tongue, like little things that you actually see the fruit of that. You see the spiritual principle play out in life. It's a spiritual law, right? So what you speak, it's actually going to affect the world that you live in. And you see, you're hearing your parents say it, but you're seeing it play out in real life. You can't ignore that. You can't.
When our kids got to be teenagers, their instruction was to read one proverb a day. Mm-hmm. And man, you would have think I asked them to read half the Bible at times. Like you can read a proverb if you're a really slow reader in 5 minutes, probably more like 2.5 to 3. Mm-hmm. And they would say, can I go over John's? I'm like, did you read Proverbs this morning? Like you can read it on the steps right there, like or they'd be like, I haven't read in 5 days. I'm like, okay, well you have 5 chapters to make up, And I look back at that, to be honest, and there's probably a better way. Mm-hmm. It's probably a better way. Both my daughters know Proverbs really well from those days. I don't know if Jay ever learned a proverb.
Did he ever finish reading?
I'm afraid to ask if he was being totally honest in those days, but so you try things as parents because you want your kids to have, knowledge of God in the Bible,
Right.
And you don't always know if it works perfectly. And so much of it is their attitude. But I mean, my mom, I was raised in a home that I wouldn't say didn't believe in God, but definitely didn't know the Lord. And my mom said things like, God helps those who help themselves. Like, I looked for that forever. Never found that in the Bible anywhere. I don't know. God helps those who help themselves. I was shocked when I read the entire Bible.
And it
wasn't there anywhere. I'm like, my mom was quoting something that isn't actually true. Mm-hmm. It's not even in the Bible. God helps people who don't help themselves, who can't help themselves, that refuse to help themselves. My God's so that was my mom manipulated us with what she thought was scripture, but wasn't even true. Yeah.
It's so funny. Oh man. Well.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for hanging with us. You can share your questions. We do look at them and next week try to answer them. Yeah. Do our best to. And hope you're enjoying these webcasts, these social media. Live. What do they call these things? Whatever it is we're doing right now.
Whatever it is.
Hope you're doing it. And by the way, remember, I fix things and I know things. That's right. It. God bless you. Have a wonderful week.